بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين شفيع المذنبين وخاتم النبيين نبينا وحبيب وقوله الحق. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. وما أرسلنا من رسول إلا ليطاع بإذن الله ولو أنهم إذا ظلموا أنفسهم جاءوك فاستغفروا الله واستغفر لهم الرسول لوجدوا الله توابا رحيما. آمنا بالله وصدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوات على محمد وآل محمد. أعظم الله أجورنا وأجوركم بمسابنا بأبي عبد الله الحسين صلوات الله وسلامه عليه. The ayah of the Quran that I have recited today is an ayah from Surah An-Nisa, ayat number 64, wherein Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that we did not send any messenger other than the fact that he should be obeyed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with Allah's permission. And had they, Allah now is talking to the people, that had they, when they were unjust to themselves, when they committed sins, when they were unjust to themselves, had they come to you and asked forgiveness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He's talking about the Prophet. Had they come to you and asked forgiveness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the messenger had asked forgiveness for them, they would have found Allah to be most merciful in his approach. This is a very important ayah of the Quran, and today we want to talk and dissect the topic of Tawassul, seeking a means to get to the proximity and nearness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in this ayah you can see that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has clearly talked about Tawassul. He's saying that you can ask forgiveness through the Prophet. If the Prophet had given you, if the Prophet had asked for forgiveness for you, then you would have found Allah to be most forgiving. So when we define tawassul, tawassul is that process by which a person seeks a means. A means is a wasila, a means to go towards the proximity of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now this is very much a Quranic concept, there is no doubt in it, and my lecture today is not to try and convince people who do not believe in tawassul about tawassul. I am addressing the believers of the Ahlul Bayt, alhamdulillah, and so my approach will be towards the believers to make sure that we understand the concept of tawassul. The Quran is very clear. In fact, the brothers of Yusuf came to him and asked him to seek forgiveness for them. There are many, many different examples that you can find in the Holy Quran where this concept of tawassul is quite prevalent. In the spiritual journey of a person, one of the tools that a servant of God adopts is to seek the help of the Ahlul Bayt as a means to get close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's one of the tools that he has at his disposal. There are many objections to the concept of tawassul because we have actually not defined it and we have not understood it properly. And the objections don't only come from our brothers in Ahl Sunnah. The objections, in fact, come also from our own people. our own people, our own followers of the Ahlul Bayt also object to this concept of tawassul, for they ask, if the Quran, Allah says that God is closer to me than my jugular vein, and the Quran says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is so close to you that He is in between your heart and your chest, then why do I have to have a means to go to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Can I not just connect to Allah directly? I should be able to connect to Him directly because He's closer to my jugular vein. This is what the Quran says, right? The problem is that we have not understood the fact that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that He is closer to you than your jugular vein, what He is talking about is spiritual and metaphysical closeness. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is close to you as your jugular vein, spiritually that does not mean that we are close to Him as well. There is a difference. When you're talking about spiritual closeness, there is a difference. If Allah says, I'm close to you as your jugular vein, that doesn't mean that we are close to Him as well. It's not a physical concept, it's a metaphysical concept. It is a spiritual concept. So our understanding of tawassul is that to be connected to the people. Sometimes what we think about tawassul as a means where you are connected to the people who are in high places, yes? This is how we think about tawassul, because this is what we do in this world. Because in this world, if you are connected to somebody who's influential, who is in a high place, then what you do is you ask that person to use his influence to get you to a place where you actually may not even be deserving of it. You may not be deserving of it, right? You cannot get to that place. You ask somebody to use their influence to get you a certain job, to be able to get you in place, to make that business deal for you, even though you are not the best person to do it. That's how we operate in this particular world. Try to get close by using an influence. Now we think in the same way when it comes to tawassul of Ahlul Bayt. We think that there are certain things that I cannot get from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There are certain blessings that I cannot get from God. There are certain mercy that I cannot get from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we feel that if we can get the Ahlul Bayt if we ask the Ahlul Bayt to get it for us, then that is what tawassul is. Getting the Ahlul Bayt to get something from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that I cannot get myself. And of course, when you think that way, the first question that comes up is this not a form of discrimination? Because you want to get something from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that you do not know, you are not deserving of getting. Now you are asking the Ahlul Bayt to get it for you. Is this not a type of discrimination? The other question comes that is this not something that will invoke laziness in somebody? Because now what happens is we take this so far that the person then says that it doesn't matter if I fast, it doesn't matter if I pray, Alhamdulillah, I have the Ahlul Bayt. Yeah? The Ahlul Bayt will get me through. And we think about the concept of shafa'at, which is the same as the concept of tawassul, really. They are very similar, right? That we think that we can get to somewhere, even if I don't pray and fast, I have the Ahlul Bayt, Alhamdulillah. I am a lover of the Ahlul Bayt. And sometimes we get carried away with this concept so much about the shafa'at of the Ahlul Bayt and Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, that we say we do not have to worry. We will come in Muharram, alhamdulillah, 12 days. I will take off the 12 days or 12 evenings. And I will come and we will do Aza and we will do Matam and we will do all of these things, and that is my ticket for Jannah. It will be enough for me. Because I have the lover of Imam Hussein. And because I am the lover of Imam Hussein, then it is a direct ticket for me, for salvation. This type of a concept is a concept that does not actually jive, does it? Doesn't look right and doesn't feel right. And it is a concept that we have in our mind, which is a false concept. That is not what Tawassul is about. Tawassul is something very, very different. And, I'm just trying to give you a feel for what is Tawassul, because the question is, if this is not Tawassul, then why do we do Tawassul? Why do we seek a means to get close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Why do we invoke the Ahlul Bayt to get close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? So then our next answer is that we do Tawassul to the Ahlul Bayt so that they can convince Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be merciful to us. We want the Ahlul Bayt to convince Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that Allah may be merciful for us. Think about it. Seriously? Do you really think that Allah needs to be convinced by the Ahlul Bayt so that He is merciful to you? That Allah does not know what you need? Allah does not have any idea what your needs are and what's in your heart? And you cannot convince Allah that we are trying to convince Allah. So now you're asking the Prophet and the Ahlul Bayt to convince Allah so that He be merciful to you? Makes no sense, does it? It doesn't make any sense. That is not the concept of Tawassul. The way to look at Tawassul is that Tawassul is a means by which I am able to increase my existential capacity within myself to be able to receive the abundant blessings of Allah. That is what Tawassul is. Tawassul, you see, the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are pouring 24/7, right? They are just pouring down on His creation. Because Allah does not distinguish. Allah is mercy Himself. He's not merciful. I mentioned this yesterday. He is mercy. And because of His mercy, that blessing is pouring down on you 24/7. The issue is, what is your capacity? How much capacity do you have in order to be able to capture that mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Tawassul is that concept that allows you to expand your existential capacity. It allows you to enhance and expand your capacity, your inner capacity, so that you are able to capture the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is what Tawassul is. The sixth Imam, Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq, salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi, the sixth Imam, in the final moments, right, of his, death, in the very final moments of his death, he gathers his family around. And he tells his family, as he is actually doing his last breaths of life, the sixth Imam gathers his family and he says to them that know that our tawassul and our shafa'at will not benefit anyone who takes his salat lightly. This was his last few words before his death. He says, our tawassul will not benefit anyone who takes his salat lightly. This means that there are certain things that we need to do. There are certain things that we need to refrain from, like committing sins, which actually will expand our capacity to acquire the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When we commit sins, when we do not follow the obligations of the religion, what that does is that constricts our capacity to accept the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is what the sixth Imam is trying to say. You can call out to Imam Hussein all you want. If you continue to be deficient in your morality and in your character, it will not have an effect. That tawassul will not have an effect. You need to expand that capacity when you call out to Imam Hussein. The purpose of ziyarah, for example, when people go for ziyarah, is that ziyarah expands your existential capacity, so now you are able to acquire that blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When you do the aza of Aba Abdullah al-Hussein, that expands your inner capacity to be able to capture that blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's what it happens. It's very important to understand that if ziyarah does not transform you, if the aza of Imam Hussein does not transform you, then the problem will be that you have done ziyarah, and that doesn't mean you will not get benefit of it. That you will do the aza of Imam Hussein. This is the greatness of this Imam. This is the greatness of this Imam, that even when you do the ziyarah of Imam Hussein and when you do the aza of Imam Hussein, you will still get the benefits of it. But it doesn't expand your capacity, in a way that allows you to acquire the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala if you are deficient in your morality, if you are deficient in your ethics, if you are perpetually sinning. If you're doing all of those things, then your existential capacity has not expanded. That's what tawassul is about. So let's discuss the various ways of doing tawassul. Recite a salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. As I said in the beginning of this lecture series, there are different levels of what we do. And there are many, many different levels, and we have to start to look beyond just the low levels and go into the deeper levels. The lowest level of tawassul, when you're looking at how do I do tawassul, the lowest level of doing tawassul is the level that we are all familiar with. This is the apparent level of doing tawassul. Calling out to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with the names of the Holy Prophet and the Ahlul Bayt. And this is the lowest level, right? The examples include having the majalis of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, going for the ziyarah of Aba Abdullah al-Hussein, crying in grief, for Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, going for the ziyarah of Aba Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam. These are the apparent ways that we do tawassul, right? Normally, we turn to the Ahlul Bayt whenever we have a problem in our lives, right? We turn to the Ahlul Bayt when we have a problem in our worldly life. Fix this for me. Fix that for me. Make this deal for me. Give me this good wife. Give me this good husband, which is really difficult. But, fix this, fix that. That's how we kind of do it, right? We look at it from the worldly affairs, right? We have not understood, then we have not realized that the Ahlul Bayt, the tawassul of the Ahlul Bayt, will actually allow us to expand our spirituality. When is it that we have asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through the Ahlul Bayt, by doing tawassul, to expand our spirituality? To allow us that blessing that we have more ma'rifat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We have just focused on the worldly issues. Allama Tabatabai, he speaks of, whenever he wanted to remove the veils and the barriers between him on his journey towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says that I found that the barriers and the veils were removed in my journey towards the proximity of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when I did two things. The first is when I did the recitation of the Holy Quran. And the second is when I did tawassul to Imam al-Hussein. And you know, if you look at, for example, Sayyid Ali Qadhi, Sayyid Ali Qadhi is the teacher of Allama Tabatabai. And he's actually the teacher of Ayatollah Bahjat. Sayyid Ali Qadhi was a great artist. He says that if you want the doors of the secrets of spirituality to open up for you, do the majalis of Imam al-Hussein on a weekly basis. Sayyid Ali Qadhi. And he says, when you do the majalis, he says, even if there is 2 people, 3 people, do the majalis of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, and you will see that the doors of spirituality will open up for you. And you will start to see the vision of the truth that will come to you. Sayyid Ali Qadhi. So how does that expand that capacity? How does this expand our existential capacity to receive the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? It does that by developing the love for the people who have goodness in them. When you develop a love for the Ahlul Bayt, you are developing a love for the people who have goodness in them. And by loving the Ahlul Bayt, because of their goodness, because of their values, because of their principles, you now start to love those values and those good things and those principles within yourselves. You start to love those characteristics within yourself. And when you start to love those virtues and characteristics and goodness within yourself, that expands your internal capacity to be able to accept the blessings from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Sometimes, you know, we create obstacles for ourselves, yes? We ask this question, you know, common question that is asked by a youth, right? Is it better for me to sit in the majlis, or is it better for me to do something for humanity? Because when I sit in the majlis, you know, I don't get much out of it, especially when you have a boring speaker like me, right? So I don't get much out of it. You know, I don't understand what he's saying. I sit there for an hour and I don't really learn anything. You know, it doesn't really inspire me very much. It's a waste of my time. And then, of course, you come to the next stage and you say, well, the majlis needs to change. The form of the majlis needs to change. We need to use more technology in our majlises. We need to have a little bit of a dialogue where there is some back and forth and there is a question and answer. We need to use, you know, a Twitter feed, you know, so that we can have a Twitter feed at the same time. We need to use the technology and the social media. We need to improve the programs of the majlis. And of course, many of these points are appropriate and they're correct. We need to change the form. We need to use things that can be more integrated with what the realities of today is. We then come and we move a further step forward and we say, you know what? We need to remove Masayib now. We need to remove the Masayib. You know, let us analyze Imam Hussein from an academic perspective. We need an academic analysis of Imam al-Hussein. We need to get rid of this emotion and this Masayib. And whilst we should do whatever we can to make our programs more effective and acceptable, we also need to understand that the majalis of Imam Hussein will change your hearts. That's what it will do. The majalis of Imam Hussein will change your hearts in a way that you love the Ahlul Bayt. And when you start to love the Ahlul Bayt, that will increase that existential capacity, that internal capacity within yourself to be able to receive more blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is what Tawassul does. It's not a question of should I do something for humanity or should I come to the majlis. You should do both. Because doing something for humanity is a higher level of tawassul, if you only were to understand that. So we talked about the lower level of tawassul, which is the apparent level of tawassul. If you look at the higher level of tawassul, the higher level of tawassul is more powerful. It's more powerful. It's called tawassul amali. Right? Here you are doing tawassul to the Ahlul Bayt in your actions. Here you are following the ways of the Ahlul Bayt. Here you are using the Ahlul Bayt as your role model. It's a higher level of tawassul. Not just the apparent level, this is the higher level of tawassul, right? Their standards become your standards. Their character becomes your character. That's a higher level of tawassul. When we live like that and we develop that form of tawassul, it is an even more powerful form of tawassul than that first apparent level. Here, you adopt the goodness of the Ahlul Bayt and you implement those goodness of the Ahlul Bayt within your life. It's a higher level. You know, our fifth Imam, Imam Muhammad al-Baqir, salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi, one day, he was walking from Masjid Nabawi, and he was going back to his house. And one of his companions was following him, behind him. And throughout the whole journey, the companion was singing the praise of the Imam. So he would say, Yabna Rasulullah. Imam is walking in front. The companion is behind him. He would say, Yabna Rasulullah, you are so and so. You are so good. These are your good values. This is what you have done. He is singing the praise of the fifth Imam. Imam is walking. He's not even looking behind. This man is behind the Imam singing the praise of the Imam until the Imam comes to his house. When the Imam comes to his house, this man now gets a little bit tired. And he says to the Imam, he says, Yabna Rasulullah, from the masjid all the way to your house, I have been singing your praise. I have been talking about how good you are. You have not even looked back, acknowledged me. At that time, Imam looks back to him and he says, indeed, if you have given so much praise to me, you have been singing so much of my praise, tell me, why is it that you are not following my way? This is the higher level of tawassul. It's a very important tawassul. And this is what Karbala teaches us, right? This is how we need to get the lesson of Karbala. When you are missing your salah, when you find it difficult to wake up in the morning and do your salah, remember Imam Hussein on the day of Ashura and see how his companions and himself, how they recited their salat in the heat of the battle. And when you remember that, then any excuse that you may have for not reciting salat on time will just go away. Tawassul amali. Right? Your actions of following the Ahlul Bayt, when you follow the Ahlul Bayt and you understand that you are doing this because you are following the virtues and the characteristics of the Ahlul Bayt, what that will do is that will expand that internal capacity of yours so that you are able to receive the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is a higher level of tawassul. But there is another level which is higher than that. And it's very important to understand this level. The highest level of tawassul is understanding the status of the Ahlul Bayt. This is the most important level. Understanding the status of the Ahlul Bayt. Understand that they are the interface between us and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The grace of Allah flows to all of humanity, flows through all of His creation through the Holy Prophet and the Ahlul Bayt. You see, Allah is immaterial, is He not? Yes? Allah is immaterial, right? He's not bound by space and time. He's not limited. Allah is unlimited. He is single as single can be, right? He is what we say completely non-compound. He's completely uncompound, which means that in the essence of God, there are no parts to Him. He is as uncompound as you can have. He is as single as you can have. You know, we think of the attributes of God, and I mentioned this yesterday, the knowledge of God, the mercy of God, the power of God. We sometimes think of them as separate, but in His essence, they are not separate at all. They are one and the same, right? The essence of God is the same. They are one and the same. He is infinite and unlimited. He is unlimited, but we are limited. We are compound. We are made of different parts. So the question is, how can something which is so limitless, so uncompound, transfer His grace to a creation which is so limited and so compound? It's not possible. It's not possible, right? How can Allah transfer His grace, because He's so, He's unlimited, and He's uncompound. How can Allah then transfer His grace to that creation which is so limited in time and space and so compound and it's made of different parts? Well, then your answer will be, well, that's Allah. Allah can do anything. Yes? Allah can do anything. It is Allah. And there is truth in that. Level of truth to that yes, Allah can do anything. Now tell me, Allah says in the Quran, He gives an impossible probability in the Quran. Allah says in the Quran, there is an impossible probability. He gives an example. He talks about those people who are unjust to themselves. He talks about those people who have arrogance. And He says that those people will not even see the gates of heaven until such time that a camel goes through the eye of a needle. Now tell me, can a camel go through the eye of a needle? It's philosophical, eh? It's deep, I know. But be with me. Can a camel go through the eye of a needle? Can Allah make a camel go through the eye of a needle? No, He cannot. Because if He could, then He would not give this example in the Quran of an impossible probability. Right? Allah can do it. The problem is not with Allah. The problem is with the recipient. The problem is with the eye of the needle. The eye of the needle does not have the capacity for a camel to pass through it. It is not Allah. That's the difference. The problem is not in the source. The problem is in the recipient of the source. Yes? The problem is not in the grace of Allah. The problem is in the recipient, because the creation is so limited, it cannot receive. Let me give you another example. Let me give you the example of the sun and the rays of the sun. Recite a salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. I don't know how this is. Recite another salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So let me give you an example of the sun and the rays of the sun. Yes? So you look at the sun, for example. Now, the sun, right, has an intensity. And the intensity of the sun is such that it emanates the rays with full intensity. The sun emanates its rays with full intensity. Now tell me, if the sun was to emanate its rays with its full intensity, would we be able to receive it? We would not be able to receive it. The rays of the sun come to us. By the time the rays of the sun come to us, they are diluted. They've gone through many, many layers in the atmosphere. They are diluted so that when they hit us in a form where we are able to accept it and take benefit from it. The direct rays of the sun, if they were to hit us without any of these dilutions, without any of these barriers that dilute it, we would not be able to accept it. We do not have that capacity. But once it goes through different layers in the atmosphere, it comes to us in a form that is beneficial for us. It is the same way. It is the same way. There has to be a medium. The intensity of the grace and the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are so intense because He is unlimited. He is uncompound, that we are unable to accept it in its direct form. It needs to come to us through a medium, in a form through which we can accept it. You know, in the same way, if you look at, for example, this is a good example. If you take, if you go traveling to a third world country, some of the countries, you will see they have a power outlet that gives 220 volts, right? Yes? And we go, and our equipment is 110 volts. So this, when you plug in your equipment into, which can only accept 110 volts, yes? And you now plug that into that plug where the outlet gives you a voltage of 220 volts, what's going to happen to your equipment? It's going to blow up, isn't it? Because it doesn't have the capacity to accept 220 volts. It only has the capacity to accept 110 volts. So what do you need? You need an adapter, right? You need a medium. You need an adapter that's going to be able to change the 220 volts to 110 volts so that you can use your equipment. That is Tawassul. That's Ahlul Bayt. The intensity is so much that you need a medium that can take from the divine and be able to give to humanity. That is what Tawassul is. That is understanding the status of the Ahlul Bayt. You take a light bulb, right? You light a light bulb, and the electricity that the light bulb takes, it will convert it in a way through that filament that is in accordance with its wattage, right? Depending on the lumens of that light bulb, that's the intensity that it's going to be able to give you. It's the same source. It depends on what the wattage is, right? In a similar way, between us and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there are various levels and various means through which the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can flow to us. And those means, the highest of those means is the Ahlul Bayt. The creation comes, into being through a process of manifestation and a process of emanation, right? But the first and the most perfect manifestation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the Holy Prophet and the Ahlul Bayt. You know, somebody once asked our fifth Imam, what is the first thing that Allah created? And the fifth Imam says that the first thing that was created by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says that the Prophet was asked this question. The fifth Imam is narrating. The Prophet was asked this question, that what is the first thing that Allah created? And the Holy Prophet replied that the first creation by Allah was the light of the Prophet. And then he says that from that light, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created all creatures. It is a process of manifestation and a process of emanation as to how creation comes into being. The Prophet of Allah has a reality, and that reality is called the light of the Holy Prophet. It is called Haqiqat Muhammadiyah. It is through Haqiqat Muhammadiyah that all of creation comes into being. It needs a medium. And when you understand that as the status of the Ahlul Bayt, we then start to understand that high level of Tawassul. Let's illustrate that with some examples, yes? You look at salawat, for example, right? The true meaning of salawat, right? We ask sometimes, why do we recite salawat? Why do we, recite salawat? Does it really benefit the Ahlul Bayt when you send blessings, to the Holy Prophet and the Ahlul Bayt? Does it really benefit the Ahlul Bayt? We need to recognize that when we recite salawat, we are reciting salawat because we recognize the position of the Holy Prophet. We recognize the position of the Holy Prophet and the Ahlul Bayt. It means that the grace of God filters through the rest of the creation through the Holy Prophet and Ahlul Bayt. So when you recite salawat, you are sending blessings to the Holy Prophet and to the Ahlul Bayt, because those blessings will come to you through him and the Ahlul Bayt. That's why you recite salawat. You recite salawat to get blessings to the Prophet and the Ahlul Bayt. Then the Prophet and the Ahlul Bayt looks at you and says, what is your existential capacity? How much capacity do you have? So now I can transfer that blessing to you. That's why we recite salawat. I wish I had time to give you more on salawat. But know one thing, that this is why you are told that when you want to recite a dua, sandwich your dua between two salawats, in the beginning and in the end. Why? Because when you ask Allah to send blessings to His Prophet and the Ahlul Bayt, then that blessing will be transferred to you. This is the realization of the highest form of tawassul, right? This is why the fourth Imam in Makarim al-Akhlaq, he has salawat 18 times in Makarim al-Akhlaq. Yes? Another example I will give you is Hadith Qissa. We recite Hadith Qissa most of the time. It's a buffer. Bible says buffer. Program is going to start. But before pela Hadith Qissa rakinako, to su mano su ave. First 10 minutes, you put it as a buffer. Similarly, we do it even for the ziyarat of Imam Hussein. Buffer. Right? If we were to understand Hadith Qissa, in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ya malaikati wa ya sukkan as-samawati, inni ma khalaqtu sama'an mabniya, wala ardan madhiya, wala kamaran munira, wala shamsan mudhiya, wala falakan yadur, wala bahran yajri, wala fulkan yasri, illa li'ajlikum, فَبِلِيَجْلِ فِي مُحَبَّتِكُمْ هَؤُلَاءِ الْخَمْسَةِ الَّذِينَ هُمْ تَحْتَ الْكِسَاءِ What is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saying in this hadith Qissa? He is saying that, O my angels, O the residents of my heavens, I have not created the erect sky, the stretched earth, the illuminated moon, the bright sun, the rotating planets, the flowing seas, and the sailing ships, but for the love of these 5 people underneath the cloak. What Allah is saying is, I have not created this creation. This creation has only come into being through these 5 people of the Ahlul Qissa. This is what we have to understand, my friends. This is the importance of Tawassul. A higher level of Tawassul, understanding the position of the Ahlul Bayt. When Imam Rada salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi, when he was traveling towards Iran and he came to Nishapur, there is a hadith that he said, right? People asked him, can you just give us one thing? Can you give us a hadith? And this is called the hadith of the golden chain, right? It's golden chain, silsilatul dhahab. It's a golden chain because the Imam says that I've heard from my father, Musa ibn Ja'far, who's heard from his father, Imam Ja'far Sadiq, who's heard from his father, Imam Muhammad Baqir, who's heard from his father, Imam Zainul Abidin, who's heard from his father, Husseini ibn Ali, who's heard from his father, Ali ibn Abi Talib, who's heard from the Holy Prophet, who heard from Jibreel, and this came from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What is it that came from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? He says, La ilaha illallahu hizni, faman dakhala hizni amana min adabi. He says that whomsoever, that there is no Lord but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is my stronghold. La ilaha illallah is my fortress. And whoever comes into that stronghold, whoever comes into that fortress of La ilaha illallah will be saved from punishment. Then Imam Raza moves a little bit forward and then he says, Wa ana min shurutiha. He says, but there are conditions to this. And one of those conditions, I am one of those conditions. What Imam is saying, that if you want that stronghold, if you want that protection from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you can only get that protection through the wali. I am one of those strongholds. So this is a very important level of tawassul. And today we talk about a shaheed. On this night, I usually talk about the shaheed whom Imam Hussein alayhi salam used as his wasila in this world. And that is Muslim ibn Aqil. Muslim ibn Aqil was the trusted one of Imam Hussein. Imam Hussein hasn't called anybody the most trusted. He has called Muslim ibn Aqil the most trusted. And for me, as we now will start to recall the companions and the family of the Holy Prophet as the nights move on, the first shaheed of Karbala is Muslim ibn Aqil. And Muslim ibn Aqil is alone in Kufa. Everybody has deserted him. He recites Salatul Isha, he looks behind him, and there is nobody in the Jama'ah. People have left, and they have left Muslim alone. Muslim is now running in the streets of Kufa, for the army of Ibn Ziyad is after him. And as he runs in the streets of Kufa, hunted by the army of Ibn Ziyad, he comes outside a home. And he sits outside a home. And there is an old lady in that home by the name of Taw'a. And this old lady, Taw'a, she comes out and she sees Hazrat Muslim sitting on the doorstep. And she says to him, "O Shaykh, what is it that you want? For do you not realize that the situation in Kufa is really tense? It is not appropriate for you to be sitting outside of my house." And Muslim says to Taw'a, Muslim says that, "Oh lady, if you can just give me a couple of drops of water, I would really appreciate that, because I have been running all day away from the army of Ibn Ziyad. I am just worried that my Aqa Hussein is on his way to Kufa. And the people of Kufa has turned. When Tawa heard the name of Hussein, she says to the Muslim, "Oh person, oh sheikh, who are you?" And Muslim gives her the answer, and he says to her, I am the cousin and the messenger of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. When Tawa hears this, she says to him, "Come into my house. I will give you refuge into my house." Muslim enters the house of Tawa, but that night, the son of Tawa, whose name was Bilal, who used to work for Ibn Ziyad, when he comes home and he realizes that Muslim is being given refuge in his house, he goes to Ibn Ziyad and he says to Ibn Ziyad that Muslim is in my house. The next morning, the whole army of Ibn Ziyad come. There is a battle that ensues. And at that time, Ibn Ziyad's army, they take Muslim and they arrest him and they bring him to Ibn Ziyad. Ibn Ziyad gives the order. He says to his people, "I want you to take Muslim to Darul Imara. I want you to take Muslim to the rooftop, and then I want you to behead Muslim." Azadaro, they take Muslim to the rooftop and they behead Muslim. When Muslim is beheaded and when Muslim is killed, now Ibn Ziyad said, "I want you to take the body of Muslim. I want you to tie the body of Muslim with a rope, and then I want you to attach that to a horse, and I want you to now drag the body of Muslim in the streets of Kufa, and I want you to take the head of Muslim, and I want you to put it on the door of the entrance of Kufa, so that whoever comes in and whoever is within Kufa, they do not dare to go against the rule of Ibn Ziyad." Azadaro. In the meantime, Hussein is coming towards Kufa. As Hussein is making his way towards Kufa, he gets the news of the brutal killing of Muslim, his ambassador. When Hussein gets the news, he calls Janab Zainab forward and he says to his sister Zainab, "Oh Zainab, come close to me." And then he says, "Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un." Janab Zainab says, "What is it, oh my brother?" Imam says that Muslim has been martyred. Go and call the daughter of Muslim. Go and call Hamida, who was the daughter of Muslim. Janab Zainab brings the daughter of Muslim, Hamida, to Abu Abdullah. Imam takes Hamida. He puts Hamida on his lap and he starts to shower his love on Hamida. He takes his hand and he puts it on the head of Hamida. As Sakina looks at this, Ruqayya, the wife of Muslim, looks at this. She starts to cry. She says to Abu Abdullah al-Hussein, "O Aqa, has my Muslim passed away? Has my Muslim been martyred?" Hussein starts to cry. As Sakina comes forward and she says to Imam al-Hussein, "Oh my father, what has happened?" At that time Hamida says, "Oh my uncle, is this how you treat orphans?" As Sakina says to Hamida, "Do not worry. Do not think that you are alone, for consider my father as your father. This is the way we treat our orphans." I will say to Sakina, if only you were to know what is going to happen in Sham al-Ghariba. It will be that time when nobody is going to shower their love on you. You will only be exposed to the slap of shimmer. You will not get any water. And it will be your earrings that will be taken and torn away from your ears. Azadarane Hussein, वो वक्त आता है वो वक्त आता है जब ये लूटा हुआ काफिला जब करबला से कूफा जा रहा था, जब कूटा हुआ काफिला करबला से कूफा जा रहा था, तो एक मर्तबा इब्न ज़ियाद ने जो उमर इब्न साद था, वो जब काफिला कूफे की तरफ आया है, तो एक मरतबा इब्न ज़ियाद ने ये हुक्म दिया कि हम कूफे की तरफ आहिस्ता आहिस्ता जाएंगे। अज़ादारों, ये काफिला जब कूफे की तरफ आता है, एक मरतबा रुकैया मुस्लिम की जो बीवी थी, मुस्लिम की बीवी रुकैया ने देखा कि कूफे के दरवाजे पे एक सर है जो लटका हुआ है। जब रुकैया ने उस सर को देखा है, फौरन सर को पहचान गई। रुकैया ने मुस्लिम को देखा, मुस्लिम ने रुकैया को देखा। अज़ादारों, रुकैया रोने लगी। रुकैया जब रोने लगी, अब रुकैया मुस्लिम से बात करने लगी। रुकैया ने कहा, मुस्लिम, मैं ये पूछने वाली नहीं हूँ, मैं तुम्हें ये पूछने वाली नहीं हूँ कि आपको पत्थर किसने मारे, आपको जख्मी किसने किया। मैं ये भी नहीं पूछने वाली कि आपका सर कैसे कलम हुआ, दारुल इमारा में आपके सर को कैसे कलम किया गया। और मैं ये भी नहीं पूछने वाली कि आपकी लाश को इस लईनों ने घोड़े से बांध के कूफे की गलियों में कैसे घसीटा है। मैं ये नहीं पूछने वाली। और मुस्लिम, तुम मुझसे ये मत पूछना कि करबला में हमारे सब कैसे मारे गए। तुम मुझे ये भी मत पूछना कि 3 दिन की भूख और प्यास हमने कैसे बर्दाश्त की। मुझसे ये भी मत पूछना कि इन लईनों ने हमारे खैमे कैसे जलाए। तुम मुझे ये मत पूछना कि हमारी चादरें सर से कैसे छीनी। लेकिन मुस्लिम, एक चीज पूछना चाहती हूँ, वो ये है कि जब कूफा आए थे तो अपने साथ मेरे 2 नन्हे लाल को लेके आए थे। मुस्लिम, हाय मेरे 2 बच्चे कहाँ है। मैं कहूँगा, बीबी मुस्लिम से ये मत पूछना, मुस्लिम तड़प जाएगा, क्योंकि आपके 2 बच्चे अभी भी इब्ने ज़ियाद के जिंदान में। वसयअलमुल्लज़ीना ज़लमू अय्या मुनक़लिबिन यनक़लिबून इन्ना लिल्लाहि व इन्ना इलैहि राजिऊन। मातम हुसैन या हुसैन।